Hey everybody, I'm Jason Bent. Welcome back to the channel. If you're looking for some inexpensive items for a woodworking shop, maybe it's for yourself in your own shop, or maybe it's for a loved one for the holidays, then you're gonna wanna watch this video, because in this video, I'm gonna talk about 10 different things, everything under $100 that would make not only great additions to your shop, but would also be really nice gifts for a woodworker. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, so the first item is a utility knife, and the one I'm gonna show you is from Bessey, which is not a company that I would typically be talking about a utility knife because they're well known for their clamps, but they have come out with a nice pocket utility knife. It's $20, I think it costs, and this actually is something that now stays inside of my tool pouch because I use it constantly. And some of the cool features about this one is to open it and change out the blade. That slides up, this folds down, and then you can just take the blade in and out, so it makes the blade changes really, really easy. Then when you close this, it actually locks back in because there's a little indentation here, so this isn't gonna slide open. So that's the first thing I really like about it. The second thing I really like about it is that it's got this little thumb pad here on the top. And that actually helps if I'm trying to apply some sort of pressure. It gives me a nice stable platform to do that. The next really, really cool feature is that it has this lock right here. This pops up, and inside of it, it actually stores additional blades. And these blades came with a utility knife, but that's not the coolest part. The coolest part is that when you turn it over and shake it, the blades don't fall out. Now, the reason that is because inside of this, they actually placed a magnet that holds the blades in place. And I just thought that that was a really cool feature about this. So when you put these in there, you don't have to worry about those blades falling out. One of the other reasons I really like having the blades on board the utility knife is because typically I'll just buy a set of these blades, super cheap, and I'll throw them in a drawer, and then I'm like going to sift through the drawer to find the blades, but now they're housed inside of it. This thing closes right here and it just locks back in place. It does have a belt clip, but I keep this, like I said, in my utility pouch that I wear on my hip. And then to close it, just like a traditional locking knife, you just simply press down on this and close it. It's very small, so if you put it in your hand, it's a really, really good size. 20 bucks, and I think it's worth every penny. It's a really, really nice, very stout utility knife. But there's a lot of uses for this in a shop, whether it's opening boxes, whether it's cutting tape, whether it's marking lines on something. This comes in handy a lot. So the next item I want to talk about is the Incra Tiny-T. And if you're somebody that's been following me for a while, this is not going to be any surprise. However, I have noticed that I've kind of not discussed this so much since I got my Woodpecker's Polini ruler, but I don't want anybody to think I don't use this anymore. I still use this a lot, and this is one of the most valuable marking devices that I use in my shop. And as you can see all the holes here, right? This is a metric version. For years I used the imperial version. Most people would want the imperial version, but what this does is this actually gives me, just to give you an idea of just how fine a measurement you can get, 1/4 of a millimeter increment, okay? So if I wanted to be 10 1/4 millimeters, there is a hole for that. There's a hole for 10 1/2, there's a hole for 10 3/4 of a millimeter. The imperial version, I wanna say, goes down to 64ths or 128ths. I don't remember offhand because I don't still have one. But what this is where you want something like a 0.5 millimeter pencil. So what this does is it gives me the ability to mark very quick, accurate, straight lines at whatever measurement that I need to mark. Let's say you were trying to lay out, a mortise location. Well, this is very, very helpful for that because you can reference each side and create your marks. And it is dead accurate. This is extremely inexpensive. The price on an Incra Tiny-T is less than $20. I think it's like $19.50 at the time of recording this. And it is worth every single penny. It is small, it fits into a pocket, it fits into a utility pouch. It's extremely light. It is very flimsy, as you'll see here, but I've had these for years. I've had multiple Incra Tiny-Ts, and I've never had an issue with any of them, breaking or anything like that. It's just very thin metal, but it is extremely, extremely detailed in the markings that you can use. The next item is a Pica pencil, Pica marker, whatever you want to call it. It is a pencil. And what they are is refillable pencils that have a very, very thick lid. They come inside of these cases right here, which, as you can see, have clips on them. You can clip them to your pants, you can clip them to your apron, whatever it is. You can place these inside of a sleeve and insert the pencil in and out like this. It holds very well. It's not going to come off. And then down here in the base, you actually have a pencil sharpener, so you can keep your pencil nice and sharp. Now, none of those are the nicest feature about this. The nicest feature is that you can buy different colored leads for these, because the gray is not going to be great on every board. Now, I'll do a demonstration here in just a moment. So I carry multiple ones of these, and I'll tell you the colors that I use the most are white, red, yellow, and standard lead color. And as you can see here, you can actually buy refill lead packs for these in whatever color or combination of colors you want. So we've got our traditional lead, we've got our white, this one has the standard color, red, and it had some yellow, but there's use cases for me in my shop for all of these colors. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So if I was to mark the graphite on the walnut, yeah, it's visible, but it's not nearly as visible as, say, graphite on white oak. Now, white on walnut, that's a little bit different story. White on white oak may not be the best option. So because of that, that's why I keep multiple colors, because when I'm using other woods, it is helpful to be able to reference something easily based on the species of wood that you're using. Now, to be fair, these are not, like, this would not be the pencil that I would tell you, this is going to do everything you need. And the reason that is because the lead is very, very thick, and it's adjustable. You just click the back and you can put it in and out. But because the lead is so thick, it handles things like rough lumber, where, let's say I'm just trying to make a quick reference mark so I can, cut this down with a jigsaw. This will handle that very well. On the flip side of that, let's say I'm using my 0.5 millimeter pencil that I use for the Incra that I just showed you. If I go to mark that, it immediately breaks. Even if I keep it short, it marked the first time, it broke the second time. So this is not necessarily the best option, and the color of this is obviously the graphite. And I can apply a good amount of pressure, and I'm not breaking the tip of that. Now, if I put this out further, there you go. But for most applications, it's going to be very difficult for you to break this lead, and it's really nice. And the simple fact that I can open this up and sharpen it and get it to a fine point if needed, you also have that option. So a really, really great marking device for any shop. And for these, in terms of price, you're looking at about 15 bucks, and to buy like an entire pack of lead like this, it may be somewhere between, $7 to $10. And then obviously this lead is going to last you a very, very long time. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about is actually a clamp, and it is a Bessey uniklamp. And what I want you to imagine is take a parallel clamp with an F-style clamp and merge those two things together, which just so happen to be the two clamps that I use the most in my shop, and you have a uniklamp. And this is honestly becoming one of the most useful clamps in my shop, along with the parallel clamps. Matter of fact, if I could only pick one style of clamp to have in my shop completely, it's going to be a parallel clamp, and these would supplement the larger parallel clamps, and they would supplement my F-style clamps. I believe these are a relatively new product from Bessey, but they operate the same way that a parallel clamp does. I currently have 6-inch and 12-inch versions of this, so for smaller projects like this, these are fantastic. So I'll do a quick little glue up using these clamps here. You'll see the squeeze out from the clamp pressure, and it applies really nice, even pressure. So okay, I just barely turned it, and you'll see it squeeze that glue out all the way across the entire board. Go ahead and tighten this one down just a little bit. Everything is nice and flush, nice and tight, nice and tight. I'm just looking for that nice squeeze out. Once I get that nice squeeze out, I'm not going to tighten anymore. These apply a really nice amount of pressure. So that's the difference between F-style clamps, right? If I was to do an F-style clamp and I was to clamp this, that bar is going to bend because it's not applying pressure down at the base where the bar is, as opposed to these, it's applying pressure across the entire face of this jaw. So because of that, just like a parallel clamp, it applies really good pressure. So if you're looking for some small clamps and you really like how the parallel clamps operate and work, these are a great, great option. And you can find these both in 6-inch and 12-inch, and they're both right around the $20 mark. All right, so the next item I want to discuss is the gripper block. And a lot of people talk about the traditional one that you see everybody using at the table saw, the micro jig gripper. And while this is a fantastic device, I don't see a lot of people talking about this push block. And there's a couple of key features that I really like about this. Obviously, to start off, it has your traditional, slightly canted handle, slightly angled. Just makes it a lot more easy to use when you're standing on, the left side of the material or pushing it through a jointer or something like that. One other thing that I like is I do like the pattern that they use on the bottom. I find this grips a lot better than some other push blocks. Not all push blocks are created equal. I think anybody that's used a decent amount of push blocks has probably noticed that things tend to slip. This does a much better job, especially when you're dealing with rough surfaces. Now, the biggest takeaway from this specific push block is this. As you can see, it's got these 2 tabs here and it's got these 2 tabs here. Well, what those are designed for, if I slide this back off, those tabs fall down, and listen. They are actually supporting the workpiece in the back. I cannot push this any further because these have dropped down. Let me show you what I'm talking about. As you can see right here, each one of these little feet are down past it. So if I come like this, slide it off the back, they drop down. And what that allows is for me to be able to put some more force behind a board if I'm trying to push it through something. Instead of me putting my hand back here and trying to push it through, it's a lot safer to use this push block that has these feet that fall down, and now my hands are not anywhere near the cutter head or the blade. Now, traditionally I use this mostly at the jointer, and I'm not necessarily trying to put a lot of downward pressure. It's more just something to help assist the board go through from the back, as opposed to me placing my hand on it like this. This push block comes in at like 25 bucks. I think it's absolutely totally worth it. Again, for me personally, I don't use this at the table saw so much. I pretty much use it solely at the jointer, but it really is a great push block. Another place that I use it is at the bandsaw, and I tilt it on its side like this, and these will actually help guide my board through on a bandsaw. So if you're looking for a very versatile push block, I would definitely recommend the gripper. All right, so the next item I'm going to talk about in this video is something that I get asked every time they see this in the background of my videos, whether I'm taking the track off, putting the track back on, or the track just sitting there. They want to know how I have that attached to my garage door. And the way that I have that attached to my garage door is by one of these FastCap track holders. It's not specific to Festool. As far as I know, it will hold multiple different tracks, and it's got 4 holes in it, 4 different hole patterns. You can mount it to drywall, you can mount it to studs, you can mount it to the metal used on the garage door, as you see right here. And the whole purpose of this is to hold your track in place so it doesn't fall out. And more specifically, if you're doing it on the garage door, it will hold it in place if you raise your garage door. So the benefit to that is that I can actually take a space that I can't use for anything else, and I can make room for other items by putting all my tracks on the door, which I fully intend on doing down the road. But this way, I can now have these stored, and when I raise the garage door and open it and close it, they're not going to fall off. And just to give you a closer idea of how this works exactly, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen these 2 real quick, and it's not going to fall out or anything. So this just turns just like this. Now I have access to my track, and I can simply pull it out. And when I need to replace it, I just slide it back up into place, twist my locks, and it holds it nice and steady. If you have tracks and you're looking for a way to get these out of the way, and you want to use an area that you can't use for anything else, definitely consider some of these if you want to mount them to your garage door. And in terms of costs associated with these will run you about 20 to 25 bucks, but you get a pair of them. So it's not 20 to 25 bucks a piece, it's $20 to $25 for a pair. All right, so the next item that I'm going to talk about is not necessarily specific to woodworking, but I know I use it a lot in my shop, and it's because I need to hang a lot of things on the wall. And since my garage, I have drywall up there, sometimes it can be a little bit challenging to, find the studs. And I've used multiple different stud finders over the years, and not all stud finders are created equal. Some of them are just downright frustrating. And I recently found this stud finder from Franklin Sensors. This is a pro sensor. Most people have probably seen this on multiple different platforms. Most people have probably used one of these before, but for me, when I found this, it changed everything in terms of stud finders. I threw every other stud finder that I had in the trash immediately. This one just works really, really well, and I'm never questioning whether or not the stud is actually there or if it's the start and finish. So for this one, you just place it flat against the wall. It's got a little button right here on the top. You just depress this button and you move it across and you'll start to see the lines light up. And where those lines light up is the left side, center, and right side of that stud. And I don't know if you guys can pick it up on camera, but I actually have this entire joint right here that is broken the entire length of the wall, and that is exactly in line with this center illuminated light. So it works very well. Like I said, I do not question it. It's a really, really good purchase if you want to find a good stud finder. And the price for this specific one, they have multiple different models. This is just the one that I ended up finding at Lowe's. Comes in right around 60 bucks, and believe me, it is worth it. If you hate stud finders, a Franklin Sensors stud finder is fantastic. All right, so the next item I'm going to talk about is something that I actually never really thought I would have that much of a use for, but I actually use it way more than I ever expected, and that is one of these nitrile rubber hammers. And I purchased these at Woodcraft, and this is the first one that I bought. I'm going to tell you a little story. I bought this thinking, oh, that's kind of cool. You know, they have different weights, and I picked it up in my hand, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, yeah, I can see myself using this for stuff. And I brought it home, and that day I was doing something with dominoes. And I'd always taken, you know, like a traditional hammer or something like that, and I'd, you know, hit my dominoes in to get them nice and seated, or trying to smack two pieces together, or get a couple pieces in alignment. I'm putting dents in things because I'm using the wrong equipment. I use this all the time. And then my son decided to take it, and I thought that he took it inside. Turns out when I was cleaning my shop, I found it underneath the assembly table after I went back and bought another one of these immediately because I missed having it so much. When I went back and bought this one, I actually ended up buying this one, which is a 28 ounce. And the way my reasoning behind this is if I need a little bit more power, this is great, but for the most part, I'm using this all the time. I cannot tell you enough. I know this sounds silly because this is such a simple item. I absolutely love this thing. I use it constantly. It is so helpful. This is great when you need a little bit more power. The price on this one is like $22 or $23. The price for the bigger one is like 27 or 28 bucks. But if you want a good small rubber hammer, definitely check these out because they are fantastic. And again, like I said, I know it's kind of silly that I'm getting so excited about one of these hammers, but I love this thing. I absolutely love it. When my son grabs it now, even though this is technically his because I have another brand new one, I still don't want to lose this one because if I have to buy a third one, I'll probably be a little bit upset. Okay, so the next item I want to talk about is a Gorilla Gripper. What this is really good for is for anybody that struggles moving around sheet goods. Anytime I go and get an entire load of plywood, having one of these just makes it a lot easier to get that stuff out of my truck. I've used this to get pieces up onto my assembly table. And basically the way it operates is it just pinches the board in between these two as you apply pressure and pull it up. I'll give you a quick example on a smaller piece of wood of what I'm talking about, but it's even great if you don't want to bend over so far and you just want to pick up a smaller piece, and I'll show you how it works. I know I kind of have you a good distance away. I've got some full sheets of plywood here, but because I've got all this stuff in front of it, I'm not necessarily going to move it. I'm just going to give you an idea of how this works. So again, I can just take this. This is a piece of white oak, or a top made of white oak, and I'm going to place it over the top of it, and then I can just lift that board up just like this. With one hand, I can carry this board around, and it just makes moving large pieces of material much easier, much more manageable. And again, like I said, you can do the exact same thing with a sheet of plywood. I actually take this with me when I pick out sheets of plywood because it's a lot easier to get them off the rack and onto my cart. The price that you're gonna pay for one of these is like right around the $45 mark. It may be a little bit less than that, but it's really worth it. If you're handling a lot of sheet goods, I think it's almost a no-brainer. But for me, again, anytime I'm going to buy sheet goods or unload sheet goods, or move sheet goods around in my shop, I'm using this. Okay, so the last item in this video, since we were just kind of talking about plywood, this also deals with lumber, and that is these Bora lumber racks that you see behind me. In a perfect world, I would obviously love to have my lumber stored vertically as opposed to horizontally. But all of that space that you see those racks was completely unusable for really anything else that I wanted in my shop. So instead of just letting that space go to waste, I decided to get some of that lumber up off the ground and put it up on the wall. And I looked at a bunch of different lumber racks and I talked to a ton of people that have them, and the one I came across the most are these Bora ones. Now, with that being said, I was very nervous and very hesitant when I originally did this because when you're putting it together, it just doesn't seem like it really wants to hold that much weight. But let me be the first to tell you, it holds a lot of weight and I've never had any issues with it at all. And these actually come as a 4-level lumber rack. There's actually another one of these that's supposed to be in the top. However, the way that I did mine, they're offset and I aligned them. And I also had my dust collection and everything else. And I had to have a certain amount of space underneath here to store my plywood, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on. I mean, you can see this is a ton of 5/4 walnut. I've got some Babinga, I've got white oak, I've got a bunch more walnut, I've got a bunch more white oak. These things hold the weight, no problems. Like, these are not even as full as they normally are. And then if you see back here, I like them so much that I added a whole nother set back here in order to get more lumber storage in another unusable space. So I'm saying all of that because if you're somebody that has been looking for lumber storage, or maybe you have a loved one and you're looking to get them something and they wish they had lumber storage, do not hesitate on these Bora racks. I am extremely pleased with them. I know plenty of people that are, and they're very reasonably priced. A pair of the 4-level, which is what I have, I think you can get 3, 4, and 6 level. For a pair of them, it's like 40 bucks. It's worth every penny. If I had more space to put some more of these up, I probably would. Again, like I said, in a perfect world, I'd love to have my stuff vertical, but I can't. I'm in a tight space. These things are fantastic. They're really inexpensive, and they will hold a lot of weight. Okay, everybody, so that was 10 tools, all under the $100 mark. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I kept all of those tools under the $75 mark. I'd have to go back and check. I feel like most of them are around the $25 mark. So these are all very affordable, very useful, and inexpensive, nice additions to have in a woodworking shop, or if you're looking for somebody that is a woodworker and you're trying to find those, not so pricey items that they would probably find a lot of use in, definitely check some of those out. They're all really good options. They're all fantastic additions to my shop. A lot of them are things you wouldn't normally think about, but for me, they all work, they all serve a purpose, and they're all reasonably priced. I would love to hear what you guys think down in the comments section below on the items that I picked out, or maybe share some of the items that would have been on your list. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know down in the comments section below. If you guys want to find out more about me and what I do, head over to BENTSWOODWORKING.com. And until next time, everybody, get out in the shop, try something new, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.